Ladies and gentlemen, a word from our special guest, Mr. Giles Davies.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's dinosaur? Thou art more slimy and more boisterous. Rough chinchillas do shake the beauty gracious stroop waffles of May, and summer's lease hath all too fancy a prestidigitation. Sometime too hot the sloth of heaven shines, and often is his antibacterial complexion dimmed. And every fair, from fair, sometime lustfully, by chance or nature's changing course, fancy. But thy sinister summer shall not shimmy, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death forbid thou wanderest in his spittle, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can hesitate, and eyes can swallow, so long lives this, and this gives pears to thee.
Shakespeare wrote that, didn't he?
Almost.
What's a stroop waffle, anyway?
What is a stroop? I had to look it up. And it is an actual word. It's a type of waffle.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
It's a type of waffle. And not being a fan of waffles, I'm not sure I can remember exactly what a stroop waffle is. I think it's the thin, hardened version of a waffle.
As soon as we get
almost
off,
like a waffle biscuit.
As soon as we get off tonight's show, I'm going to go look that up.
Look it up.
I am Bill DeYoung, and this is the Catalyst Sessions. Hopefully you figured that out. Thank you for joining us. We're trying the best we can to keep our arts community connected through the St. Pete Catalyst, and thank you so much for joining us. And please welcome Giles Davies, actor extraordinaire, Shakespearean guy, and a man with very long hair. Here's my little intro I wrote up for you, okay? And we're gonna
please spill the
okay. So I kind of did the accent, but I want to ask you about. Did you ever see Peter Sellers doing his Laurence Olivier doing A Hard Day's Night? I'll have to send you that video. Yeah. It has been a hard day. It's so funny. He with the wig and the Elizabethan thing. Anyway, so here's my intro. Hang on. Born in Hong Kong when it was still a British colony to a Welsh father and an English mother. That's right. It was there that Giles developed his lifelong love for theater. And when his mom and stepdad moved the family to Indianapolis, Giles was 14. He began to appreciate not just the script, but the written word, the way things were put together and how, in various ways, it could be interpreted and performed. Now, Giles has been performing on Bay Area stages since 2007. If you've ever been to Job Site Theater, which is the one in the Strass Center complex, you've seen him because he's in a lot of stuff and he always absolutely tears it up. Tell us first, what was it like growing up in colonial Hong Kong? Can you tell me how that, what influence that continues
to have
on you today? Yeah, the way you work, and you spent 14 years there.
I did. Yeah. And, those are very formative years of, your perspective on the world. And it was such a unique environment that I took for granted for the longest time. And it wasn't until I started to become a little more self-aware and, start making my own choices and decisions. We still did a decent amount of traveling, so I would go to the UK to visit family, or once my mother remarried, my stepfather brought us to the States a couple of times. First time was to Hawaii. We almost moved to Hawaii, can you imagine?
Well,
but then
you got Indiana.
And we got Indiana, right? Yeah. The excuse there was it was the best opportunity that arose. I think the environment appealed as well, at least initially. But everybody, after 10 years, everybody bolted. But as far as Hong Kong was concerned, it's so unique to not be tied or defined by the national character that you grow up in and the country that you come from, and identify yourself as such. So I was asked, and obviously was, a Brit, yes, but a unique Brit in that I never lived in the UK. That was never home. It was never familiar. And you're really a bit of a fish out of water culturally and appearance-wise in growing up in Hong Kong, although there are a whole lot of expats in Hong Kong. There's just a whole lot of people, so even then it's only 1% of the population. The vast majority of them is the Cantonese.
But you got involved in theater while you were there.
I did. My parents, although they were never fool enough to pursue theater professionally, they did a lot of theater, community theater in Hong Kong, which was of a very high caliber because there was no English-speaking professional theater.
Right.
So it was the only theater going.
I always wondered, it's Cantonese, right? Was there Cantonese professional theater going on? I mean, if you really wanted to go see something with great production value, you could shell out the money, but it wasn't in English.
I don't think so, in that culturally, theater is, to my knowledge, not very prolific in China, at least not within the Cantonese culture. You've got opera, which tells their stories, and that can be a little hard on the Western ear, but it certainly is its own style, Chinese opera.
But you got, I think you told me once your mother was involved in the community.
They were both doing community theater. They met each other doing community theater in Hong Kong. So after a day's teaching, at which I was at the same school, my mom would take us, a lot of times we'd go straight to rehearsal, or I'd do my homework in the green room if she was performing, and then we'd get home late at night, and do it again the next day.
Do that whole theater thing kind of imbued in you.
I did.
Way of life and learning lines and blocking and all that stuff.
Right. And being around theater type people, although none of them were professional in the craft, they all were all of that personality. I mean, there's just a certain ilk for people who enjoy performance.
At the same time, Giles, when you came to the States, were you kicking and screaming, I don't want to go? First of all, if it's not Hawaii, you wanted to go?
No, I was kicking and screaming.
Were you? Okay.
Although, I mean, in British culture, children are seen and not heard. There's a great deal of respect. I mean, one of the biggest cultural differences that became very obvious to me when I first came is just the conversation between child and parent is different. There's a liberty given to the youth here that was not allowed us, at least in Hong Kong, within my family at that time.
You were seen and not heard.
Yeah, for the most part, and there's a great deal of respect. And I think a lot of that, instills a civility that is sorely missed in today's world. And one of the few things that really does irk me is incivility, a lack of respect.
Yeah.
Whether you agree or disagree.
I think I would certainly agree with that. My children in their 30s, I can't do anything about it anymore. If they're watching, hi guys. Hey, listen, some things people around here may not know about you is that you have a degree in history from Ball University, and you were the singer in a punk band.
I was.
And were you also doing theater during that stretch too? And
I was, yeah.
You were kind of a rebellious jerk, I think is what you told me once.
Yeah, I was a bit. I was a bit highly opinionated. Luckily, these things get worn away after, in time. And but it was just a great opportunity. I think the cultural shock of coming from Hong Kong to the States, especially Indiana, especially at that time period, really just kind of set me off. I was a round peg being hammered into a square hole, which made me, one, aware of the square hole, and also the fact that I had been shaped into a round peg, which then allowed me to revolt against anything and everything. So I promptly did so.
Well, this is what I was asking you before, though. So all of these things probably had some influence on the way you work today, the way you can totally inhabit these characters and lose yourself, which is, of course, something you're famous for. I wanted to talk about, though, you went to Europe, you bummed around, as they say. You went walkabout, right?
I did.
This is before you came back on your MFA, right?
Yeah.
So what was that about? Were you going to find yourself, or meet women, or what was going on?
I had always been a child of the planet, first and foremost, an earthling. I think that also comes from growing up in Hong Kong, because I come from a place that no longer exists. The world was my oyster, and I wanted to be its pearl. So I needed to go celebrate, experience, and live life to its fullest. And there's the European tradition of the Grand Tour, which was really simply the excuse. But obviously, there is, culturally given some worth to the idea that at the end of your university education, you would then do a 5th year to travel and see the world and absorb the cultures and the art and so on and so forth.
You supported yourself by performing. Street corners?
I did. Hard to say that I supported myself, but I made pocket money. I made enough to get by. I traveled very cheap. I lived very cheap. I had no plan. I had no necessity to be anywhere, nor live in any. My expectations were low. Even a roof wasn't necessarily a requirement. So a lot of times, pretty soon after being in a place, I would get absorbed into the culture. Somebody would come across me of any ilk, family, teen living on his own, a full family of 5, a couple. They would just befriend me and end up inviting me in, and I would stay with them for, anywhere from 2 days to sometimes a month or 2.
With no plan for the future. You weren't thinking that far ahead. But at some point you finally said, I'm going to go back and jump headfirst into theater.
Right. That year ended up turning into 5. It did.
The 5th year of college. Yeah.
And after about 5 years, I was, not as young as I was. And it had almost become mundane. So I could tell it was time to do something else. Yeah. And I was back in the States visiting some friends. And as you said, I'd been doing theater, but for the most part, because I wasn't tied to anything, and fate and chance and whim were the order of the day as far as my life was concerned, I couldn't do ensemble theater. So it was pretty much any solo show that I had in my pocket, or anything that, I wanted to do some poetry or, some prose. I could turn that into performance. So it was
why was that? I mean, you just hadn't really trained to do ensemble work? You worked on your own so much?
No, it was just that the ease that I could still do theater and still live the way that I wanted to live at that point.
Oh, okay. So you're the whole company. You can pick up and move whenever you want to.
Right. And it's not easy to break into a theater, because of what we do. Theaters like to hire people they know or that they can trust. And I was screaming untrustworthy at that point.
Well, something changed. Something changed.
And so, and I could just do it. I didn't have to wait for anybody. I didn't have to get hired. I could just do what it is that I love to do. But I was back in the States, and I decided, life was going to change a little bit. So I did one of these big cattle call auditions in Chicago. Yeah. However, I really hadn't done my research. So after the audition, when I went to find out who was interested, it was a bunch of universities. And I was like, well, I'm not interested in going back to school. I'm looking for a job. But it was an audition for universities. As I said, I hadn't done my research. I just heard there was an audition. So I just did. So then, having jumped through all the hoops, I was like, well, I may as well go and meet these people. So I did. And then I realized they were offering me a better job than I was ever going to find in the theater. You know, with a stipend and all, I was going to, you know, have an excuse to do nothing but theater, study nothing but theater, wow. Get to teach, and walk away with a bigger paycheck from the stipend that I would ever make in theater, or at least had ever made in theater.
So you stumbled into it.
I did. And after, you know, very soon I realized it was an unbelievably smart move. Great faculty, great program. They were one of the first programs in the country to start to offer a focus track for the MFA in solo independent work, self-created original work, which the reason they were interested in me is because that's what I had been doing. So I got to meet some great theater professionals that were bringing through some fantastic artists at the Wexner Center, City Company, DV8, Marcel Marceau. I studied with him a couple of times. My movement teacher was actually he was a mentor of hers. So yeah, fantastic, you know, and it just sharpened skills that I really hadn't sharpened. Although I'd been very physically capable and athletic when I was younger, I really hadn't joined that part of my life to my performance. So then, you know, to have a set of tools and a vocabulary to be able to communicate to my imagination and my creative self through my intellectual self, and to have a, you know, vocabulary and a mode of communication to create it unlocked potential that had yet to be unlocked.
Well, everybody who's seen you here knows that you're a very physical actor, and you know that it is, like I said before, in that most cliched of ways, that you inhabit the characters. You graduated from, it was Ohio State, right? Is that when you went to work for Cincinnati Shakespeare Festival?
That was.
Yeah.
One of my classmates at Ohio State, he was a little more professionally driven than myself, so he was, you know, beating the pavement as we were about to graduate, and told me that he'd done an audition and met these people with Cincy Shakes. And that it sounded like a company, you know, we had obviously had conversations about the kind of company we would want to join. And he was like, they sound great, you know, it's like right up our alley.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was in one ear and out the other. And as is so often the case in my life, luckily fate, you know, was like, hey, it gives me a little nudge, and a day I woke up and about halfway through the day, a little bird on my shoulder, just, you know, a little voice in my head says, hey, you know, Giles, isn't today the day of that audition? And I was like, oh my God, I wonder if it's today. So I called, and indeed it was. So I said, well,
thank you, little bird. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Thank you, little bird.
Yeah.
Things going on inside your head that you weren't barely conscious of.
Well, you did that though, and you. I can't. You've been. This is where I jump off the timeline. You've been here, more or less, since about 2007.
Yes.
How long were you with Cincy Shakes before you came here?
9 years. 9 years. So, is that right? I joined Cincy Shakes in '99.
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
more or less.
And I was with them for 9 years, and then I came here, which would put me here 2009, 2010. And
okay, I had 2007, but
yeah, that's a little early, I think.
Oh, I read it in the St. Pete Catalyst. I thought it must be true. You know,
I might have said it. You know, time being what it is.
You came down here. I think you did a show with Guerrilla Theater, and you must have found job sites.
That was the first show that I did. I was here for less than 2 weeks, and I heard about an audition. And again, it was, you know, kind of a play based on Shakespeare, Elizabeth and Edward. You know, the authorship question. And Audrey, who was, for all intents and purposes, the artistic director. I'm not sure if he had that title, but the funder and the co-creator of the theater, Guerrilla. He had written the piece. And it was right up my alley, and I didn't know anybody, a great opportunity. And sure enough, I got it. So I was just, you know, really thrilled. Nancy Cole, Dr. Nancy Cole, she was the director, and I eternally thank her for taking a chance with me, you know, because I was entirely unknown.
You got involved with Job Site. I would think not long
I did,
after.
and that was within, I think, a year and a half to 2 years of when I first moved here. Initially, I went to Gulfport, and I lived over in Gulfport for.
I mean, did you feel like you found your home with you and David Jenkins are kind of like birds of a feather, you know? Yeah. I mean, I belong here. I belong with these people.
I mean, it's the reason I stayed with Cincinnati Shakespeare, which I think since has perhaps outgrown me, or maybe it was the other way around, who knows. But there was a very young, we weren't even an equity company at that point, but it was a company driven by actors trying to make a way for actors to find a way to live. It's about the art. It's about making cutting edge theater that is viscerally stirring, you know, not your stodgier fare. And that really plays to, one, my strengths and to my aesthetic. And I love that company, and really it became family. But then it kind of ceased to be the same. And when I found something that was similar to that here, I was very thankful, and luckily, and I hope it stays that way, it's been a fruitful relationship for all involved.
You know, I've seen you do so much Shakespeare there, and you know, obviously Midsummer Nights. I had Cassandra Rose on here recently, and everybody was involved in that is just they're in isolation, still talking about it.
Yeah, it was a tremendous process, and
that was a great show.
Yeah, it was a great one.
Well, what I was going to say was I've seen you in so much Shakespeare and quite a few other things too, but the thing that, here's a little bit of gushing praise. The thing that knocked me out was the Thanksgiving play, because it was different from what I'd seen you do. You know, I mean, don't take this the wrong way. It was like an extremely well-written sitcom. It wasn't like a sitcom at all, folks. That's not what I mean. But the writing was so witty, and the four of you just never stopped. And it's an entirely different role for you. Is that fun for you to do sometimes? That kind of
It is. Yeah. You know, I think it sharpens other skills. It, you know, assures me that it's not just the word, and it's not just Shakespeare's words, but that I myself, in what I do with words, is good, you know.
And Constellations was wonderful too. You and Georgia Guy. I mean, that was really fantastic season.
That's a fascinating piece of theater to do.
That stop-start.
It was hard.
I talked to both of you when you were doing that. It's like, how do we remember which version of this scene we're on in any time? But that's part of the challenge, isn't it? That's what you like about it. To kind of go out there, and it's different for you every time. The words are here, the physicality is here. Everything else could be completely different.
Right. And I do try to make it just about as hard for myself as I can. You know, if it feels easy, I'm not doing it right. I'm not putting enough out there. The higher the bar I set, the more work I get out of myself. And I think that drives my love for the craft, and it is that love for the craft that then allows the audience to love the work. If I don't love what I'm doing, that lack of love it just creates a bit of a hole. It's a bit of a lie.
Can we talk about? We're almost out of time here, but I wanted to. We started with your Mad Lib sonnet, and we should explain that Roxanne Fay, my good friend Roxanne, who's directing May Day when we finally get it on stage in the fall, and David Jenkins came up with this wacky idea to combine Mad Libs, that thing I'd never heard of, but I read about it, and it's apparently a fun game. Substitute words and to make up a Shakespeare sonnet, and it was a way of, you know, getting a few donations for a job site, but mostly a way to keep everybody kind of connected and laughing.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's, folks at home, that's what Giles did at the beginning of this quote unquote broadcast. And basically what had happened was everybody was testing
around a video that I made in the garden.
No, we showed that. We put that on the Catalyst.
Great.
With the cans of pears.
Right, with the cans of pears.
Del Monte. Anyway, so then the next part of the thing was, we have this fabulously weird, funny thing. Who do you want to recite it in the video? And overwhelmingly, I think David said they got 200 suggestions, and 100 of them were that you did it, because I think because of the natural way you do Shakespeare, and it was funny as hell. It reminded me of the Puck you did in Midsummer Nights.
Great. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun to do. I was honored to get asked, and just to be able to, I mean, we're all in a very peculiar situation, and to maintain that connect and feel like I spent my time doing something that I love to do, and people found it of worth, and it maintained that connection. The more we can reach out and try to do things for each other when we're all alone, I think that's very healthy, and something to carry and walk away with from the experience.
Well, on that note, JobSite is doing some other things. I think there was an announcement just today that there are some more videos coming. And
I was wondering if we could say anything about it. So yes.
Yeah, he did announce it today. Go ahead, tell us, Giles.
I know very little.
Okay.
Other than an email I got that said, that was a lot of fun and quite successful. So how does everyone feel in the ensemble about doing some more of this and creating little Shakespeare shorts?
That's right. Yeah, right. So
in a very intimate way, so that the emphasis is not on the production, but simply on the word and the performance of that word, and the beauty of language, and us reaching out to each other.
That's cool.
As artists to the community, and artists to artists. Forgive the alarm.
Oh, there you go. My phone went off last night because I'd forgotten to turn it off. So we'll look for that on JobSite's website and on their Facebook page. Are you booked for the fall already? Do you know what you're going to be doing? Possibly.
I have options that I would love to do and would pursue. I would have known more, but pretty much the week of an important audition that I was, had my fingers crossed for, was when the whole quarantine started, at least officially. And then soon after that, I was supposed to do another audition for a show that I wanted to do over the summer, and that fell through. So it's it's a very tentative time. I have nothing planned. Normally, come mid-May, I would fly out to California to teach seventh graders. It's an annual job that's really can make life possible for the rest of the year, but I don't think that's happening. Although when they reached out, we spoke just before the stuff hit the fan, and they were very interested, but I don't see it happening now. Well, I will know more soon.
Yes, we will all know more soon. Listen, man, we're out of time. It's been great talking with you.
Cheers, man. Great to see you.
And
stay healthy, huh?
Yeah, you too, man. And we'll talk to you real soon, Giles.
Great, brother. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Everybody. Stay healthy.